We want to go now to Vern Heyer. He's the owner of Diacron, and correct me if I pronounced that wrong, Vern. It is a Griffin company. It makes high-precision metal parts. You've been very patient hanging out with us here. Vern, thanks for making the time on this very exciting day. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well, it's great to be part of this whole project, and I'm actually an old guy from the '80s. That I designed part of the space station back in the '80s.
Well,
So back,
Vern,
yep.
you answered the question I was about to answer for our audience, because they may say, why are we talking to a guy who's all about high precision machine work and metal parts? And it is because your company, Griffin Company, right here in Metro Atlanta, has played a role in the assembly line of this Artemis II mission, right?
Yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, I'll show you a few little interesting parts. So, as you said earlier, thousands and thousands of people participated in the creation of what you see behind me that's getting ready to launch. So, something as simple as a piece like this is just a little metal piece. This is one piece of thousands that go into the rocket ship behind you. And they go from high precision metal pieces like this to little connectors as small as my fingernail that help put these. So thousands and thousands of engineering time, of which I just played a very small part of. I just grabbed a few little things that are going up into space. This is aero coupling. This is a high precision connector, a variety of different air devices. So as an aerospace engineer from the '80s, that my eyesight wasn't quite good enough to be one of those pilots going up there. That was my passion, to be a pilot. But you can't be the pilot. There's thousands of other things you can do, and I just picked a very small thing to be as a what we call a contract manufacturer. So many of those parts in there, we're what you consider a build to print manufacturing facility. GM Diecron, started by the Gwynn family back in the '70s, actually. We actually helped put together a lot of the Gulfstream jets that are down in other part of Georgia. So a very deep history with the Georgia environment. So go from a jet to a rocket. The complexity of high precision parts are, absolutely crucial. So when I see this massive engineering feat, we feel pretty excited to be a small part of it. Matter of fact, today we're going to get a visit from Congressman Brian Jack that we're really excited to show him. He's going to come see what we do here in his district. So this is a big day for us. So we're wishing the whole team their luck. And matter of fact, my little brother went through space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, and did all that. He became an Air Force officer, procuring many of the other parts on it. So this is kind of a family affair. For
Boy,
me as well.
Vern, and there's so much I want to ask you about, and luckily we have some time to chat as long as you do. Let's start with this. You mentioned your brother. He went to space camp, which is for kids when they're growing up. You go to space camp and you sort of get a behind the scenes taste of what it's like to work at NASA. Went on to be in the Air Force. Went on to serve. If you were listening in, Danielle and I were just chatting on how many different aspects of this kind of space exploration, this kind of NASA mission, how many different ways it can touch and inspire the next generation. And your family is living proof of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was a little envious because he got to go jump in the water. He got to be weightless in a machine. He got to do some of that training simulation. Ultimately, that space camp led him into the Air Force. Believe it or not, the space camp was his entry into the Air Force Academy. So he got to hang with all those pilots. While I was more the nerdy one of the bunch, if you will, the guy with the glasses who went and designed the parts that he got to go fly. So yeah, no, it absolutely many different roles people could play in for sure.
I remember being a little kid, and one of our neighbors, his older sister, went to space camp. And I remember thinking, boy, that has got to be just the coolest thing. And you know what? All these years later, she got involved in doing a lot of the engineering behind some space efforts as well. And we're in this era where more and more doors have been opened up to participate in space exploration, in satellites, in rocket launches, in this era of both public and private space travel. Vern, you talked about, as you were showing us, which was great, those models of the parts that are going to be, not those specific parts in your hands, of course, but those
Yep.
parts that are a component of the Artemis II launch today. You mentioned you feel like you're a small part of a big, almost assembly line. For people who don't know
Absolutely.
how this all works, how complicated is just the procurement process? How many different hands touch collectively all the parts that go into building a rocket like this?
Oh, it's, even for something as small as this one part, if you do the math, there's hundreds involved because the metal in this is a aerospace grade aluminum alloy, which has to be traced all the way back to the original mine. So we know where this material came out of the mine. And then there's very high end non destructive testing that can analyze this. And then for the kids that like to play video games, all of these are designed in a 3D modeling CAD system. In many cases, they're 3D printed before they go into a test assembly. And then there's a variety of different stress testing that makes sure it doesn't fail. So the amount of technology behind this and the new artificial intelligence to optimize the weight of this, along with metal 3D printing. Matter of fact, one of my good classmates at Iowa State Engineering ultimately became the CEO of the Boeing Corporation. So,
You're kidding.
no, we're both farm boys from, rural America, and he ultimately became the CEO. So then my other good friend became the CEO of the Lockheed Corporation. So I ended up staying in the small little companies, and they went to the big ones. But I still keep in contact with them today, and all of us were part of the ecosystem, whether we were part of a multi-billion-dollar company or if we were part of a small rural community like Griffin, Georgia. So yes, hundreds of thousands of people are involved in what you see behind us today. So we're just excited to have a little bit of piece of part of that, and we're excited about having a congressman visit us on the day of the launch. So yeah, no, I couldn't be more excited for today.
It's a big day. It's a lot of excitement, and I would imagine you, just like so many of us watching along, feel a big bundle of emotions. There's a bit of anxiety, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of excitement, there's some trepidation. When you see this rocket lift off, and as you watch it, if all goes according to plan, in just under 4 hours, and you know that you played a role in putting that all together, what do you think is going to be going through your mind?
Me and my brother, we have a bet. So I say everything's going to work perfect because the engineers were behind it, and he says the weather's going to mess it up. So we've got our typical bet, a quarter.
Sounds
So
like brothers. That sounds like exactly what you'd expect.
exactly. So I just think about all the different people involved. And I was in Washington D.C. last week and had an opportunity to meet the astronauts. So I've met the astronauts and talked to them about it. So
What did they tell you?
oh, they're just totally excited to be part of the whole program. They're just as giddy. And you're talking earlier about watching the movies and things like that, but they are very active and meet people, and they're not only pilots, they're scientists. So they some of the things they're going to do while they're there is just very interesting, and yeah, they couldn't be more excited about it. So, and it's interesting. It's also a multi-country event with the Canadian astronaut, which is kind of unique too. Getting the two countries to do something so important for the space race, if you will, it's pretty exciting as well. So,
And Vern, you mentioned, you've been a great interview guest, and I know we kept you waiting a little while as we were watching those astronauts board the spacecraft there. But I'm so glad you stuck around, because in your opening answer, you also mentioned that decades ago you were involved in the space station as well. Did I hear you right?
absolutely, I was an engineer at McDonnell Douglas, and another little interesting tidbit that happened back in the '80s is I was working in the Los Angeles area, and this crazy engineer asked me to come up to the San Francisco area because he had some ideas. And I went up there, and he was looking for money, and I stayed away from him because I didn't have any money, and that was Elon Musk. So I actually ran into him before he became who he was. But it's funny because he was trying to get all of us to give him $5,000 a piece. And at that point in my life, I didn't have $500 to give him. So I look back on it, and I could have taken that ride as well. I did okay doing other things, but my son reminds me, Dad, if you would have just kind of teed up with that guy back in the '80s, you might have mounted to something. So your kids kind of give you a hard time, but I had an opportunity and I didn't have the money, but I had the opportunity. So it was an interesting time.
Well, we are glad that you made your way to Metro Atlanta and made your way to Griffin. I would suspect your son may occasionally pull up some stock tickers and say, "Hey, Dad, take a look at this."
He
But you
does
know
it
what?
quite
That's
often.
life. That is
That's
life, and
life.
that's a son's job to. If you got a good relationship with your dad, give him a little friendly elbow every now and then. But you bring up a good point
Absolutely.
here, Vern, too. And you talk about bumping into Elon Musk all these years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the universe of, to use a space phrase here, but the universe of people and companies involved in space exploration, it was a tighter network a generation or two ago, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all about NASA in the beginning, and now you've got the multiple, both the private and government sectors working together. That's what makes this one kind of unique and exciting, especially when you get to Artemis III. Is it's a team effort, and I'm always a big fan of a team effort. So I like to see all of the activities, and I spend some time in Huntsville even today. So you've got a lot of different companies together. This one is very exciting, and the next one's even going to be another step up when they go on the moon. So I'm looking forward to the complete Artemis initiative.
Let's talk about that. As somebody who has spent effectively your life, your career watching this evolution of America and the world's role in outer space, to be having a straight-faced conversation right now about not
Yep.
only another lunar landing, but then a moon base that is planned within the decade.
Yep.
Is that ever something that you would have expected to see potentially in your lifetime?
I could see us getting back to the moon, but I have a hard time struggling getting to the Mars. So it's funny, with those movies and everything coming out, and then ironically enough, my daughter works for the Disney Corporation, and she's involved in all those movies and things like that. So she tends to take some of the movies and she overlaps me into the video content, which is kind of fun to watch. I I think some of those things seem far fetched, but you got to do some of those far fetched things that take it to the next level. So I'm kind of excited to hear about that Mars movement is the one I have a hard time buying into as an old engineer. That seems the stretch to get to Mars. Colonizing the moon is a big thing, and as we walk the hill with all the congressmen, senators a week ago, the big thing is I found it interesting. We talked about we need to get the good spots on the moon before the Chinese do. And so I never really thought about it that till just a few weeks ago, that this is a step in the process to get the best spots on the moon. So
And there always
I think
is, the geopolitics that impact this. We're living in a, it's interesting always how what's happening down here on Earth impacts what's happening in outer space as well. The space race that got us to the moon was the space race with the Soviet Union decades ago,
absolutely.
generations past, but a similar dynamic of this race, who can get there faster. Vern, you point out, you say, you said, I think, as an old engineer, is how you described yourself, you got a little bit of a hard time thinking about getting to Mars. I'd expect some of the engineers, when President Kennedy said, hey, we're going to the moon, may have looked around at each other and thought, we are? I just said,
Yeah.
it's a tall order, and yet we got it done, right?
Absolutely. And I think the technology today is pretty amazing, because I think if we get to the moon and then the whole world of additive and 3D printing, the concept is that maybe we can use some of the minerals and natural resources of the moon to 3D print the next movement to it. So I'm absolutely for it, and I just hope I am still around when we get to get to the Mars. That's the next big one. But this is a great step in the right direction, and then being on the moon and setting up that first colony is really the best thing. So looking forward to that.
Vern, one last question before we let you go. We're really grateful for your time here. As an engineer, if you had the chance to talk to mission control, to talk to all the engineers and all the specialists, all the scientists who are going to be involved in this mission as they watch these 4 astronauts lift off, if all goes according to plan in just a few hours, what would be your message to everybody back on Earth supporting this mission?
Oh, it takes a team. So that would be my message. There is no one company, one individual, one group. Everybody plays a role in it. And quite frankly, the people that failed before them probably added the most value. But the people we never know that did a test, had a failure, something. You learn from those. So that would be my message.
All right, Vern Heyer, the owner of Diacron in Griffin, playing a part in assembling some of the parts that are going to be heading out to outer space on the Artemis II mission in just a few hours if all goes according to plan. Vern, thank you for your time and your perspective. We really appreciate it.
All right, you have a good day. Thank you, sir.